vendor performance management, it's usually measured by a series of agreed contractual key performance indicators, KPIs, which are often put into dashboards so you can manage them through them. Most VPM systems, they use dashboards or balanced scorecards, and they could be written down balanced scorecards, typical spreadsheet based balanced scorecards, and that measure a vendor's performance. And they offer a view of how your vendor is performing. Um, Typically your vendor performance management KPIs, they cover areas like risk and compliance. They cover areas like costs, quality, delivery, the relationship itself. Things like legal compliance are in there. Ethically sourced material can be in there. Contractual and policy adherence, invoices and product received match the purchase order, typical details of that. Cost payment terms are in there. Competitive pricing, how often prices change, quality, materials of the grade, delivery, what are the lead times, on-time deliveries, ability to scale, how do they fix complaints, errors, changes, how they roll out changes, how's the relationship managed, how's the financial stability of the vendor, customer service and their prompt communication, and how are they doing continuous improvement. So there's a lot that you can cover in vendor management. But what we're looking at here are the three most important questions to ask. And before we get to those, the three most important questions to ask that you got to have an answer to in vendor performance management, well, we're going to have a look at the whole hairball of vendor performance management that's out on your screen right now. What we see here are the big blue balls in the middle. The big blue balls, they are the use cases, so the activities that you need to have in place for a successful vendor management process. The activities you need to have in place, and they're organized based on their prioritization and their priorities. Their priorities come from software that we developed in-house that builds AI and puts those into a prioritized state. And ones with the highest priority, they're the ones that you need to get in place ASAP to make sure that it's all covered. And we'll get to that later as well. Quickly go through the other colors. The pink balls, they are the questions that are aligned to the use cases, to the blue balls. So every use case has a question aligned to it to make sure that there's understanding of what needs to be done in accordance to the use case, and if that's in place. So I often start workshops with just the questions on a whiteboard, and we just go through the questions, and people will start answering those questions to get an idea of if we're on the same page of what we need to do. These questions come from the books, the toolkits, the critical capabilities are the use cases, the blue ones in between, and our books are toolkits. I mean, the orange ones around here, those are job roles that are aligned to the subject at hand. So these are the job roles that are in place and have responsibilities aligned to vendor management, vendor performance management. Those are the job roles here, the orange ones, and I'll show you some of those later. What we'll also see is here and there a red ball, red ball. Red balls are important. Why are red balls important? Those are the top 48 questions to ask to have a successful vendor management program in place. The top 48 questions, and before we do that, let's go to the top three of the most important questions to ask, as I promised. So, what is the number one question to ask in vendor performance management? What do you definitely need to have under control? Now, let's see. Vendor performance management. What do I need to have under control? This one. Does your program measure vendor performance against established SLAs? Do you have service level agreements in place or contracts? Service level agreements is typically something that's used in an IT environment, enterprise IT. It's a contractual obligation agreement against the services that are being delivered by information technology. So a SaaS solution, for instance, for example, has a contractual SLA attached to it. Does your program measure vendor performance against established SLAs? Now, how do you actually do that? Verify that your team leads the vendor performance management program, so they collaborate with business owners of vendor relationships to ensure compliance with vendor management policies are in place. And what we see here is it's related to the topic of management. It's a must-have. It's high in the priorities. So as we see here, This is a prioritization number, the green ball. I told you before that they're all prioritized, the critical capabilities. So just to make it easy for you, you follow the yellow brick road, the things that you need to do, put in place, and off you go. So this is the highest one that you need to have in place. Have SLAs in place, service level agreements, call it contracts, call it service level agreements, but measure the KPIs, have them in place, have them agreed upon, and have them reported upon regularly, and updated and changed wherever necessary, because they're aligned here to your enterprise risk management program. Vendor performance management, you don't do that just for fun, like, hey, are we getting along as a vendor? And when we hire you in, no, it's all based around risk management, risk as an organization, especially these days with logistics and supply chain problems that we see everywhere. We want to have a decent vendor performance management in place to manage our enterprise risk. That's important to us. Okay, let's go to the number 2 of the most important question to ask. The number 2 of the most important question to ask is, can your organization measure vendor performance through a series of out-of-the-box KPIs, key performance indicators, that can be presented in an executive dashboard? So I want a dashboard. Of course I want a dashboard. I just want to see in one glance, one instance, how things are going with my vendors. Who's lagging, who's doing great, what is the performance, what am I looking at, who's underperforming, and where do I need to manage things? How do I do that? Ensure your organization is responsible for implementing your organization-wide end-to-end vendor relationship management process to maximize vendor performance and value. So it's about building the relationship with your vendors, managing the relationship with your vendors, because you're in control of your enterprise risk, of your own risk, and you need to ensure that your vendors are aligned to that continuously. You see, this is related to vendor due diligence. Let's open this one up as well so you can see how they're connected. Now we've got them both. The top 2 questions, we've got them here on our screen. They're both management issues, so management needs to take care of that. This is aligned to enterprise risk management program, and this the vendor due diligence. Other questions I can ask here to ensure that we've got that under control is, what are the potential roadblocks to further mature your enterprise risk management program? And I will ask that question of our senior digital marketing specialist. And while I'm at it, I can ask that person some more questions that are related to our vendor performance management program. This one, who will be responsible for verifying vendor data? Another question to ask, and I will ask that question of the supply chain performance specialist, the director of delivery and excellence, and the senior SC planner. While I'm at it, I might as well ask the director a couple of other questions. Where should performance management vendors focus their product development efforts? This is all to get my service level agreements in place. My top 3 priorities, the KPIs and the SLA. So I've only done 2 so far. So to get that under control, these are the questions I need to ask as well. Has your organization developed a comprehensive data analysis and reporting strategy? Does the vendor monitor the performance of its own suppliers, contractors, and service providers? These are all criteria that are in the toolkit that's related to this, and a vendor performance management toolkit, and the books that are related to it. Now, let's go to number 3. So we got them all covered. The 4 most important questions to ask to have a successful vendor performance management program in place. Number 3. And this is where we dive a bit deeper into KPIs. KPIs must be aligned between business leaders, marketing, and management. What are the key performance indicators for your specific role in relation to vendor performance management? So partner in the establishment of a beneficial, holistic contract management process, service level agreement process, clarifying roles and responsibilities, identifying and mitigating risks, managing and resolving vendor issues, and strengthening relations by leveraging vendor performance data across the organization. So share the information and make sure everybody knows how a vendor is performing and what everybody can do to help to make sure that the vendor is performing to its maximum capabilities. And this is related to third-party risk management. See, covered risk is related here. I'm going to open all 3 of the most important questions to ask in relation to vendor performance management. I'm going to open them all 3 up. So we have a blueprint of this gets the conversation going in my organization to ensure that vendor performance management is under control. So do we have SLAs? That's this one here. I can point at it, but you won't see it. Do we have SLAs? That's this one here. Do we have KPIs? That's this one here. And how are the KPIs aligned between our leaders, between our staff, our management? Who does what actually? And then when we dive deeper into that, we can fill in the blanks of what we actually need to do, have a holistic contract management process, clarify the roles and responsibilities, mitigate risks, identify the risks, manage and resolve vendor issues, and strengthen relationships by making sure that vendor performance data is shared across the organization. Another thing that I can do here is lead the vendor management program and collaborate with business owners of vendor relationships to ensure compliance with the policies that you've set, and ensure your organization is responsible for implementing your organization-wide end-to-end vendor relationship management process. So it's a process you need to have in place to maximize performance and value. Here is my blueprint for, I'm going to put the ball right there, vendor performance management. These are the 3 things that I must have in place, because they're must-haves here as well. These are the highest prioritized critical capabilities that I need to have in place. You can see that by the numbers here as well. And they focus around areas like vendor due diligence, third-party risk management, and enterprise risk management programs. And if I click on those, more pops up that I need to be covering. Let's click that one, this one. Then third-party risk management. If I focus on third-party risk management specifically, these are other areas that I need to cover when I focus on third-party risk management in relationship to vendor performance management. But it all revolves around risk vendor performance management. The top 3 questions that you need to be asking to make sure that you have a very successful vendor performance management program into place. Here they are. Now, I've got here SLA. Does your program measure vendor performance against established SLAs? Now, I want to be diving a bit deeper into this and see if there are other questions I can ask in relationship to SLA, service level agreements, because now I'm curious. And yes, there are. So here I'm just going to look in the questions just for the term SLA, service level agreement. Has your organization reconciled performance against SLA's KPIs prior to payment of invoices? A good one. So don't just pay invoices, but make sure that the SLAs are met and the KPIs are met. All right. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to ask the enterprise risk manager if we do that actually. Do you provide customers with ongoing visibility and reporting of your SLA performance? The senior vendor manager provide oversight of contract compliance and vendor performance to contract award. And are there performance expectations or SLAs in the vendor contract? Optimize the development of end user surveys, of end user measurements to ensure that your SLAs are being measured as well. Certify your operation ensures vendor relationships and they have metrics to evaluate performance and adherence to SLAs through surveys and scorecards. So here are all the details specifically towards SLAs, service level agreements. When I just want to focus on SLAs, what else do I need to do and what can I focus on? And I can double click, open them all up, and up they come with where they come from. This one's from source to pay, which makes sense in a logistics and supply chain environment. And I double click this one, and I think I've double clicked this one. No, double click this one. There we go. So now they're all double clicked. Vendor performance management. If I want to focus on service level agreements, SLAs, who am I going to contact? The orange balls, the senior vendor manager, enterprise risk management, enablement and technology risk manager, learning and performance specialist, director of inventory planning. These are my actual job roles in my organization that I need to have in place to make sure that my service level agreements I manage from a vendor performance management perspective. So all this data, by the way, I haven't mentioned that yet, is down in the link below. You can see it in the show notes. There's a link, a URL. The data goes to the Kanban. The Kanban is completely available in the link below. You can scroll through it. You can search through it. You can find whatever you want to find and purchase it if you want to reuse it for commercial purposes or reuse it in any way that you deem is useful to yourself. All right, so this is where I just dive a bit deeper in SLA from a question perspective. But when I want to do that from a use case perspective, these are the use cases that have SLA service level agreements in them. Everything that I need to do, and obviously they cover a lot about monitoring, establishing, managing service level agreements and ensuring they meet SLA targets, safeguard that your group monitors vendor performance against agreed SLAs and conducts reviews of the service, utilize operations data and KPIs to drive business decisions and exceed all SLAs. And here we have, a new one, OLAs, operational level agreements. The operational level agreements are like the internal service level agreements in your own organization that you have in place that are aligned to your service levels. So to make sure that you can manage, or the vendor can manage the service levels that are in place in its internal organization. All right, so these are the most important use cases to have in place when I want to focus on service level agreements, for example, specifically. And this is the top three. Act as a trusted consultant to business owners in vendor selection, requirements gathering, vendor performance management, and category strategies. Confirm that your staff drives business unit relationship managers, team members to define business needs and manage performance management to SLAs. And this is a big one. And I'm not gonna read this one, but it also states here statement of works. It needs to be need to be in place to manage those. Evaluate SLAs, contracts, and statement of works. Vendor performance management. So this is a way to look at just one typical keyword and figure out what needs to be done. And just for the fun of it, you know what I'm going to do? Double click them and see what's happening here and who I'm going to be asking those questions as well. What's my blueprint for if I want to focus just on service level agreements? Vendor is the main keyword here, management. These are the job roles that are aligned to it, must-have activities, and they focus on these specific areas. There you have it. Easy, simple, right away. Great answers. Now, the main areas to focus on when you do vendor performance management. What are your main areas to focus on? What do you reckon? Here they are. This is what I call a word cloud. So out of all the use cases, all the words in there, the lines, the sentences are in there, are measured, weighted towards each other to make sure that the highest prioritized critical capabilities come bubbling up to the surface, and those are the ones that we need to focus on first, like the ones I've just shown you before. So these are the words that pop up that are the most important words in relation to vendor performance management. To me, this is helpful because it gives me an insight in what I want to focus on in a management meeting or in a meeting in general. Usually I just pull this up on the whiteboard and I go through these words and go like, okay, what do we want to focus on? Guys, girls, men, ladies, what do we want to do? We want to focus on, let's have a look. I'm going to pick a word. Which word shall I pick? Stakeholders. Let's do that one. Stakeholders. I want to focus on stakeholders. These are, let's pull updates out of the way. You needy one, stay there. Stakeholders, these are the areas that I need to focus on when I want to focus on stakeholders in relation to vendor performance management. So ensure full engagement of key stakeholders via ongoing communication and review of results. Verify that your company evaluates in-use and prospective technologies with information system stakeholders to determine best fit for short and long-term solution strategies. And make sure your workforce creates reports for a variety of stakeholders. Make sure your organization leads meetings with key internal customers and stakeholders to drive outcomes. And again, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open them all up. And I'm going to check for my little blueprint on the screen here related to stakeholders, what I actually need to be doing to make sure that stakeholders, the stakeholder internal process or area that I need to cover is successful, is worthwhile. And it's related to vendor performance management. And these are the other questions I can ask and the people I can ask them to of. I'm going to take that away because it fills up my screen. See? All right, so these are all the keywords that are of importance to me in relationship to vendor performance management. If I have issues with my supply chain, okay, that's on supply. Here we are, supply. These are all the criteria that are related to supply that I need to have in place. And I can ask my team, I can ask myself, are we covering this? Are we actually doing this? And what do we need to do better in this area? Are we good enough here? So that's what I want to know here. Now, let's drill it down a bit to because this is a whole lot of most important words, as you can see. Let's see what comes up if we only do like the top, let's say top five. What are the most important words? Technology risk, quality, vendor obviously, management. So technology risk, quality, those are the most important words related to vendor performance management. Makes perfect sense to me. I'm monitoring on quality, I'm managing my risk, and I'm figuring out issues with technology to make sure that it's a smooth process, that I have dashboards in place, service level agreements, make sure that the vendor management process goes smooth. So this is an interesting way to just get on the board what I need to be focusing on, specifically on vendor performance management from one perspective. Now, another area you can have a look at is you can use to have a look at is what related areas is vendor management, vendor performance management related to. These are all the related areas, vendor performance management. I'm going to zoom in and pan over it a bit so you can have a look. So these are all the related areas that vendor performance management touches or manages or monitors. Monitoring and reporting, service desk, risk appetite, chief supply chain officer, IT infrastructure monitoring tools, vendor relationship management, cybersecurity awareness, supply chain management, and it goes on and on and on. So these are all the related topics to vendor performance management that I need to be covering. So if I just want to click one and see what comes up, technology value creation. There we go. These are the ones that I need to cover for technology value creation. And how am I going to do that? That's how I'm going to do that. And what other questions am I going to ask? These are the other questions I'm going to ask. And I'm going to be asking them of these people. I'm going to be asking them of these people in my organization. Now, if I trouble, for instance, with sourcing, I can just pull out the sourcing one, and I'm going to just drag it over here. So I have a clean screen. Sourcing. Sourcing, oversee analysis of supply chain effectiveness, vendor risk, and vendor performance. And what prevents smaller vendors from establishing highly effective testing and analysis programs? Excellent question. So this is another way of looking at it, all the related areas to vendor performance management. Now, if I want to just go with the top 10, what are the most important areas that I need to focus on when I'm working with vendor performance management? Due diligence, third-party risk management, have relationship managers in place, systems analysis, risk management, enterprise risk management, technology value creation, vendor performance management, supplier management. Now, look at this. Excellent. Agile HR. I'm going to pick one. Let's pick third-party risk management. These are the areas I need to be focusing on in my organization relationship to vendor performance management. How good is that? So that's a good way of looking at what other areas do we need to cover in my service level agreements, in my contracts, in my statements of work to make sure that we have a decent vendor performance management process in place, and that's all covered. So, what are the activities that need to be in place? These are the activities that need to be in place. These are the top 10 activities, use cases that need to be in place. So like I said, they're all organized based on their prioritization. They're prioritized. If you have these 10 in place, it covers the whole gamut of vendor performance management. Now, I won't read them out loud to you. I'll just pan over them or put them all up on the screen, and you can zoom in on the replay. This is obviously live, so you can't pause now. But in the replay, you can easily go back here, zoom in, and have a look at all the top 10 priorities that need to be in place, the use cases that need to be in place, have a successful vendor performance management process in place. And again, here, when I specifically want to focus on one area, like risk, these are the use cases that only deal with risk. So I want to focus specifically on risk. I'm going to focus on these top 10 on risk relation to vendor performance management. This is what I'm going to do. Like pick a short one, maintain and update policies, procedures, and best practices for vendor management of vendor performance and associated risk. Oof. And this is how I do it. This is how you do it. Our policies and processes reviewed and updated regularly. Senior manager of vendor program management. Other questions I can ask of that person while I'm talking to him or her, and I'm dropping by the office. What we see here is all the questions that are in the down below in the vendor performance management critical capability. So all the questions that you can be asking. Sometimes I just put these up on a whiteboard and I go, like, okay, let's pick a couple of questions. Are we able to answer that? And do we manage that? And if we don't know the answer, then we can just double click and see what comes up. Which type of leadership is best suited for optimizing team performance in projects? Okay, let's see what comes up. There we go. These are the activities that need to be in place for that, to do that. So these are all other questions. They're related to vendor performance management, and there's in the toolkit and the books there's up to 1,000 specific questions, and they range. They are organized in a way so you can measure your maturity level of vendor performance management. The higher the maturity, the further up you are in the scaling. Now, one more thing to have a look at, and you've seen some of them, are the job roles that are in here. The job titles in vendor performance management, and there's a lot. See all the beautiful, beautiful orange balls. There's a lot of job roles that are related to vendor performance management, that deal with vendor performance management. All these job roles are real job roles in real organizations out there. Real clients that use vendor performance management, and these people are responsible for it. Now, why am I pulling this up? Because often this is also used for people who want to get into a role that's on the screen and want to prepare for a role in a job interview, for instance, or you're organizing the job role in your organization and you want to make sure what kind of capabilities that person needs to have and responsibilities. So I can just double click on one of the roles, and these are the questions that I need to be asking of that person when I'm doing a job interview or when I'm getting ready for a job interview. And I'm also want to know what I actually need to answer to that question. There you go. And I can go down the rabbit hole and I can have an excellent job interview by asking all these questions, or just talking about my experiences from these questions as a background and how everything is related. So job roles, very important bit to have in place in your organization as well. What are the capabilities, the responsibilities that need to be in place for all these people in your organization related to vendor performance management? That's what I wanted to show you as well. Now, with that, you have the three most important questions answered, and probably a lot more. But before I leave you, I'm going to leave you with the three most important questions on your screen that we have answered today, and way more, I hope. And I'm going to open them up just for the fun of it, so we can see the whole connection bit, how they're all connected. Let's see, got that one clicked, got that one clicked, yeah, and got that one clicked. There we go. The three most important questions relation to vendor performance management and how to actually answer those. And with that, I thank you for your attention today, and I'll see you again tomorrow.